Welcome to the Love Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon. You may know me from Project Love, where we focus on operational excellence, but here we go deeper. We're your go-to for raw, empowering conversations on entrepreneurship and stepping into your CEO role with love and confidence. Each week, we'll explore everything from mindset shifts, leadership, optimal wellness, to efficient systems, all within a community of visionary women like you. Ready to get real about building a business and life you love? Hit subscribe and let's start this transformative journey together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Love Unplugged. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, and today we have a very special guest with us. Please join me in welcoming Kira La Forgia, founder of Paradigm Consulting. And you can see she has a puppy. She's very fortunate to have her with her during the workday. But she is a people operations expert, which I am super excited to dive into you with. But thank you so much. I'm truly honored to have you join us, Kira.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry that my dog decided to introduce me before you got to, but hopefully we'll keep it to a minimum. But I mean, if we're working from home, I think that's kind of a no-brainer these days. There's a puppy or a kid or somebody hopping into different meetings here and there. So
absolutely. I am more than happy to have a dog join the podcast. So I do not mind at all. But let's get started with your journey leading up to creating your business. You know, was this always the intention? Did you go to school for this specifically? Like, what exactly were you doing prior to becoming an entrepreneur in your business?
Yeah. So I always had in mind that I wanted to be a consultant. I didn't know why, but there was something. I did a lot of leadership training early on in my career right out of college, and I learned that I like to dive really deep for a short period of time. Later, about 2-3 years ago, so about 12 years after this kind of realization, I got diagnosed with ADHD. So there's a pretty strong correlation between that, like a pretty big hyper focus into a project and then kind of like, okay, that was cool, on to the next. So now there's kind of like this informed reason why I was drawn to creating a career that allowed me to deep dive into projects and throw myself in and then kind of move on to my next thing that interested me. But I started out in corporate, and a lot of those initial instincts were definitely silenced by the bureaucracy or, having to be a yes man or just being a young woman surrounded by a bunch of not young women that were successful like I was in these different sales positions. So when I found my way into small business, it really connected when I was able to kind of have a voice in what was going on day to day in the workplace and building trust with the owners of a business to hand things off to me. And small business meaning I have about 50 employees at that company. So not quite as small as, working with a lot of our clients that we work with now. But through that process, I looked at all of my tasks and duties from an operational lens. I had gone and gotten my master's in organizational management. So the people side of business always really intrigued me. But the way that I was able to attack it with all 50 employees was through systems and operations. So HR kind of came as a secondary but necessary pathway there, because you can't manage an operations team or you can't manage a team at all without understanding the people side of it. And in small business, we don't have an HR department that we can lean on. So I became the HR department, and I'm located in California. So I got lots of fun extra laws and things along the way. So that's sort of generally speaking, how it informed how I kind of ended up here during COVID, starting my business, wanting to help other women to see that having support with your business is so important. And one of the ways or the things that made me so passionate about that is that during that career, working at this small local business, I absorbed, in order to get paid more and more money, because small business doesn't exactly have like bags of cash laying around, I absorbed 6 other people's roles. So from training managers to site managers to one of the owners ended up leaving, things like that along the way. It became a way for me to get more money. So to pitch myself as a person that could absorb through strategic systems. And that was great for a time, but at the end of the day, doing 6 people's work is not conducive to success. And so I ended up burning out so badly that I got diagnosed with PTSD. And on this kind of up and down journey, there's all these things that you can be really proud of with yourself and, looking at this experience and what you learned from it. But really what I walked away from is that we don't have to do everything to be worth what we're worth, and teaching small business owners, that entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, that you don't have to do everything to be worth a high salary, a high pay point, to be valued for your expertise, your experience, and your creativity became kind of the passion point of how we decided to start helping those teams develop or help entrepreneurs build small teams through HR practices from an operations lens. You kind of have to have both when you only have one person doing it all. So
yeah, absolutely. So you're definitely speaking my love language here with the operations element, but you definitely need to have the people element when you are in operations. It goes hand in hand, unfortunately. So I'd love to know, what was your experience going through burnout and discovering you have PTSD and navigating that, because it's not easy. Let's just be honest here. And then how did you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to create my own business?
Yeah, it was, I think, over the first time I was diagnosed. So I was actually told, like, you have burned out to the point where something has to change. It was from a therapist, and a psychiatrist later was involved. It was an actual, like, physical wall that I hit where I was walking out the door to go to work and my body would just not let me do it. I succumbed to a massive panic attack. My mom, who works in psychiatry, came over, brought the Xanax, brought the Ativan, like, tried to calm me down. My husband was at work, so he didn't really know what was going on at the time. But I was just walking out the door, like, after my morning, I had been doing yoga and Pilates that morning, just like walking out, going into the office, and I just physically couldn't go. And at this time, and especially in small business, everything was coming at me. So it was a moment of, there wasn't really any way for me to rest or escape. The phone was still ringing off the hook while I couldn't breathe. So it was at that moment where I knew that something had to change, but I didn't understand why I couldn't just get through it. It's just going into an office. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I love the people I work with. I love my job. Like, why won't my body let me go? And I'd already been in therapy, but, divulging this incident to my therapist, it wasn't just like, oh, you're having a bad day or you're hormonal or you're PMSing or whatever. But it was like, you have literally burned the candle at both ends. Like, you have nothing left. Like, you have no motivation. I wasn't creative. This was going on prior to that, but I just kept talking myself out of it. And I felt very trapped. Like, I had taken on all these people's roles. The company, people's jobs would be at stake if I didn't keep going. And I didn't know how to ask for help. And I didn't know who to go to for help, because I had siloed myself into this role thinking I was amazing and could do everything on my own. And while that may have been kind of the case, it's definitely not something that is sustainable. So having that, like, physical manifestation of the mental block, my brain was already telling me this for a while. I was having trouble sleeping. I was already in therapy. I was having anxiety on the daily. Like, I couldn't anticipate, like, how I would feel on a weekend. I was, like, bed rotting for every single weekend just to recover from the week. I was having animosity towards people that I loved in the business that I worked for, my employees, my people that still work for me now, and resentment, and just, like, all these very complicated feelings that I couldn't understand because I asked for this. So then came the guilt and, working through that with my therapist, and then finding out that there was a diagnosis of PTSD after the burnout happened was kind of a shock. It was like, wait, people get this when they go to war. Like, who do I think I am to have PTSD? Like, from just, like, working hard that I chose, that I put myself in. I wasn't trapped into this situation. I wasn't forced into this. It did feel like it. And so unraveling that and starting to see the moments that I, kind of went one way when I maybe should have advocated for myself and went the other way, or prioritized something when I should have prioritized something else. And, like, that long road of unraveling that helped me understand where this kind of hitting a wall came from, it's still happening. I mean, that was 5 years ago, and I've recently had some interesting symptoms that are very reminiscent of that time, running a business and being a COO of a company. I have to be very cognizant given my history. And just just to open up a little, like recently I've been having these very similar feelings, and it immediately puts me back into that mindset because that's where my brain has told me that that's where you go. And so actually the struggle is more with unlearning those things. So instead of when I was having those feelings of fear or anxiety or resentment or whatever it is about my own business or my job or whatever's going on, instead of just going into myself like I did back then, I like immediately reached out and talked to my coworkers and my colleagues. And now I've since hired people to help me more. I've gone to them and shared, not in a like, we better figure this out or we're all going to die kind of way, but in like a, hey, I need some support with this. Like, can you help me sort out my thoughts? Can you help me to take things off my plate? Like instead of going internally, I really tried to go externally. Those are coping skills that I learned as a result. So I think, in answer to your question, I think it was more of radical accountability and understanding that I actually put myself in this situation by being a person that has codependency issues and believes that my worth is in how other people see me, and trying to unlearn that and unlearn those beliefs. And ironically, I think that that's what a lot of our clients do. We think we have to do it all ourselves. And it's more than just, well, I'm a woman, I better do it all. But it's probably a lot deeper than that. And so I think that's why I love to help clients in this way, because it's not just HR compliance. It's like, who are you as a leader and how are you going to make sure you're setting yourself up for success so you don't end up on the floor with no physical ability to go to work because you have ignored your own needs for so long. So it's kind of weird how it all ties together, but it's a constant journey. I mean, your brain puts you up to this in the first place, so you got to figure out how to go back and make sure it doesn't happen again. But it's all, it's up to you to decide. Well, it's up to me to decide what path I want to take this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you're starting to recognize the patterns now so that you can take different action so that you don't end up where you did before, because burnout takes a long time to recover from. It's not like I hit a wall and it's like 1 week later after taking some rest. No, like it's a long ass process. So that's good that you're able to recognize that right away. And I love that you mentioned, going externally and asking for support, because a lot of the times we do feel like we need to do it all and we need to do it all ourselves. And it's never going to be done right or the way that we want to have it done if we don't do it ourselves. And like just being able to let go and just like asking for support, because you can't do it all by yourself.
Yeah.
It's not possible, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to let go.
Yeah. And you can't do it well. So if you're putting yourself in a position to be a high achiever, and this is what I learned through many different avenues that I've sought support. This was in 2018 when this happened. You can't do it well. Like you can do it pretty well on your own, but if you're a high achiever, you want to do things the best. And it's really hard to juxtapose those two desires, the desire to be amazing and to produce something amazing and to create something awesome that people love, that creates testimonials and success stories and whatever. And then also be like, well, I can't really do that if I'm all alone. Like I'm not showing up in the best way for anyone if I'm counting on myself to do it. It's interesting to think about that internal versus external, because I think a lot of the stuff we see online is like, you must find the answer within yourself. And I think that I internalized that too much, because I was like, well, if you want success, you work on yourself. And it's like, sometimes working on yourself means a vulnerability and opening up to the people that are outside of you. And that's not something we see a lot. So if you're hearing this and it's resonating, I'm giving you permission to look outside yourself for support too. Like it doesn't all have to be on us. You don't hear men out there, like not to go on a total like rant, but you don't hear men out there being like, I'm feeling really stressed. I might be having a panic attack. I think I'm going to search within myself for how I can make this better. Like that's just not, it's okay that, like I wish sometimes I could be a little bit more like that. But I think that there is definitely an opportunity for us to make those changes in our own patterns and behaviors and to give ourselves some grace.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, let's dive a little bit more into the burnout. So what strategies or systems do you recommend for entrepreneurs to effectively delegate tasks and be able to prioritize self-care? Because we know it's so important and able to unplug and reset. in order to build that sustainable business?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter what size of business that we're working with, whether it's somebody that is a massive agency that has, every person in the online world has bought one of their courses, or they have a million podcast listens, or whatever the case may be, or if you're just starting and you're trying to figure out how to get help for the first time, the conversation is very similar in the beginning, because it's like, it used to be just something in our questionnaire, like, what is your mission? Like, why are you doing all of this? And you see so many coaches out there and so much rhetoric out there about, like, yeah, figure out what your mission is, and, make sure it's printed on your website, and make sure it's published in your, wherever you can put it. But what we find is that by the time it gets to the place where it's time to, I guess, delegate to others, you have to be so tuned into that mission that you don't even have to think about it. Like, your actions and your reactions are accidental. So you've usually had some time to let your practices, your business, your offers, your interests shape your mission. So revisiting that, even if you're really advanced, is a great idea. And then looking at it, it's not necessarily a system, but what is your mission for what you want to do to serve the world? And what is your mission for how you want to build your team? Because there are some business owners that that's going to drive your entire company culture. And so we call it your internal values versus your external values. And you don't see that a lot, because why would employers be sharing those all over the place unless they're hiring or something like that? But I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners try to make those the same thing. The service that they want to provide to everyone externally is also the mission that they want to see provided to their team, but separate it and see how different it really is, because they probably don't overlap that much. And once you figure that out, it'll be a little bit easier for you to figure out little things like how to delegate and what's a priority for your business. So once you see what that internal mission looks like and how different it is from your external one, focus on building systems that actually have to do with that mission, not so much the one that has to do with your external mission. Because on the operation side of things, we want everything to flow really smoothly and be really great and, be automated and take a little bit less time. But once you start to take a look at your internal processes, and maybe you have a dream of having a team meeting where all of your consultants or all of your copywriters or all of your people that are serving your clients are showing up and talking about the progress that they're making with your clients, and they're going along the same process, but they're also talking about how your client's getting married or having a baby, or they're expanding their own team, or they're hitting massive milestones in revenue. Those are all things that you will, if that's your dream, if that's your vision, if that's what you want your team meetings to look like, that's actually going to come all the way back down to the mission and how you build out your systems to support that outcome. So I think we skip all that. A lot of our clients will skip all that, and they just get to the point where they're like, throw some stuff and click up and start delegating. And really, it's about more the why behind the what. And that should be what is driving your internal processes, your communications, your SOPs, your ability for your team to connect with your clients or your fellow employees or team members. And I think we skip that because we just think, I got to get stuff off my plate. But if there's no why behind the what, then you're just going to be delegating stuff. You might as well just have a VA that's not really part of your business and is just checking things off a list. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what we help people do. Like, we help you build a team that's going to help you grow your business and increase your capacity and increase your reach and, all of that good stuff. And so to that, I mean, the systems and stuff are all going to be dependent on what your desires are and what you want. Like, if you want everything to feel like it's custom, bespoke, and personalized for every single client, you're probably going to have really loosey-goosey systems. And that's fine, if that's what you want. But if you have to deal with 50 different states of laws and payroll and, all the stuff we have to do, we have really stringent systems in order to get to a place where my team is showing up in the way that I want the culture to feel like. And little things like time off are affected by that. And, it just really bleeds into every single part of your business.
Yeah, a lot of people forget about the culture, the atmosphere, the environment behind the scenes, which will impact the external, right? Like, it has such a bigger impact than what people think it will. And often the times people are just quick for that immediate gratification of like just getting something off of their plate and not having to worry about it anymore. But when you're building out a team, there's so much more that goes into building that team, right? It's not just hiring somebody to take something off your plate. They are like ambassadors of your brand. They are working on the front lines as well with your clients, but they're also like helping you bring your vision to reality, whatever that long-term North Star is, right? So you need to make sure that they are on the same page. There's a tone within the team. Everybody is in line with it and acting accordingly. Like everything's being done in accordance with how you want. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. And it does get skipped. And I think part of that is because there's really not too many people out there like banging on your door to say like, no, think about the why behind the what before you hire somebody. There's a lot of people out there saying like, what's scalable and how should you create this program to be scalable and hire people to do it for you and free up your time. And yeah, those are all marketing messages that we use too, but it really is deeper than that at the end of the day. Like the impact that you have through your team is based on the culture that you set. And a lot of the women that we work with, because it's primarily women that are our clients, are, for lack of a better term, traumatized by cultures from their previous experience. And many of them were pushed into entrepreneurship to avoid the bias, abuse, the corporate trauma that comes with being an employee. And, that's not what they want to build. And I think it's interesting because they have such a desire to create something different than what they came from, but they're forgetting that initial step, which is to go out and say, this is not part of our culture. I don't want it to feel like how I suffered or how I felt, and instead using those experiences to enrich how they're showing up for their team every day and not to be afraid of them or lean away from them. Like we've had quite a few clients that put off hiring help for a really long time, not because they're afraid to delegate or anything like that, but because they're afraid they're going to create what they were victim to. And I understand that in such a deep way. And I also just want people to feel empowered to know that it doesn't have to look like what you saw and what you experienced or what you've heard about. And you may think that, well, obviously I want this culture that feels like this. Doesn't everyone? And after working with 75 different companies, they are not the same. Like they all of our clients are amazing and beautiful and wonderful people with different skill sets, but they all have different desires for the businesses that they want to build. And that's why they aren't all just one marketing agency. They all have their own voice. And so don't like take it for granted. Like don't think like you're just like everybody else because you want to promote a healthy workplace. There's more to it than that, where you can actually make an impact through your people. And that ripple effect is so big and it's so long. I think that the impact we make on our teams is the biggest impact we can make as entrepreneurs. So don't think you're just like everybody else. Like your unique voice is so different and you just maybe don't know it yet because it's only been infused by your own experiences.
Exactly. You touched on so much there. Even like with what you were saying about how, people are just kind of focused on like making the money and like all that type of stuff. And they don't necessarily look at that. Even with my experience of just focusing on the operations end, I'm like, it comes down to what are you trying to build?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're just solely looking to have easy money coming in, well, it's not easy, but you know what I mean? Like you just want to focus on getting money in. You're not looking to build a company that's either sellable or scalable or you want to have for a long term or anything like that. Then just focus on that. But like, if this is what you're looking for, you're looking to build a legacy, you're looking to build a scalable business, you want to build something that's like sellable down the road possibly, or you want to keep it small, but you want something that's more than just a revenue generator type thing. You need to put the systems in place. You need to look after your culture. You need to hire the right people. There's more to it than just the marketing and the sales aspects. You need to look at the back end piece. So that's so interesting that you brought that up. And I love that you mentioned, people are scared or scarred from their corporate experience. And it is scary because sometimes you think that there's only one type of culture. As soon as you like hire a certain amount of people, it's just naturally going to gravitate towards a certain type of culture that's just everywhere type thing. And that's not the case, right? You set the tone and you have the ability to determine exactly what that culture is going to be like and who you're going to bring into it. You can choose the candidates that you bring into your company, and you can also let go of the ones that don't align down the road as well.
Yeah. And the stronger your culture is, the more seamless and easy it will be for you to maintain the team members that add to that culture. And for the team members that maybe aren't really resonating with it, it doesn't mean you're an evil person because it's not resonating. It just means that it might be time for them to find something else. One of the goals I always have with anyone I hire is that we always leave on good terms to the best way that we can. And it's not easy to do. It takes constant attention and it takes constant care and constant communication and sometimes uncomfortable communication. But if, after working in a business for so long where I hired hundreds and hundreds of people and still work there and have fired, I don't know, I mean, nowhere close to 100, but over the course of the years, there's been a lot of experiences with that. It's just always my goal to, by the time we're having that conversation where it's time to let someone go, they understand why it's happening. And we're both kind of excited to see what they go do next that's more aligned with their skill set or aligned with their cultural needs or their physical or emotional needs, even just depending on what the business is standing for. And the second that, and your culture is so tenuous, like it is so delicate. And the second you bring someone into your team, like your actual team, they are 50% of your culture. So if you're not telling them what you want it to be like, you don't have a culture. You have two people that are working within the confines of a friendship or relationship. And that's really, really hard to manage. So creating a culture, and, we always say that HR should actually be your third hire. You've got your lawyer, your accountant, and your HR person before you bring anybody on that you're including in your team. Even if it's just joining our membership or something like that, that can help you to kind of dictate some of these little things, because there is nothing more discouraging than hiring your first person and having it not work out and really not understanding why. And then there's nothing more discouraging for us than to have people say, well, you never know what could happen with people. And it's like, well, you have a lot more control than that. Like you really do. You just have to know how to develop that control and how to communicate those cultural boundaries, as well as the operation stuff, the systems, the work, the tasks, the processes. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there has to be a means of communication to get you to the why behind the what, or else people are just going to be floundering. And people often don't work out that seem like they're going to be a great fit because they didn't know what to do and they didn't know how to ask. And so I think that's one thing that I want all of our people and all of our clients and all of our community to feel really responsible and accountable for, is the experience of the people that they're bringing into the fold of their team.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think the impact goes beyond the internal as well. Like your reputation could become damaged. Like I've been reading this one book that I won't name, but I've been reading this one book, and I've heard of many other situations where employees after the fact talk about their experience working at X organization and how chaotic it is on the inside and how everybody doesn't know what they're doing and there's no processes in place and like they're unhappy and like the tone that's set by the CEO is questionable and things like that. And like when you hear that type of stuff about a company that you once thought was reputable and all that type of stuff, it starts to damage the trust, right? Externally. So like that's just another layer of why it's so important to be able to focus on this and be able to engage someone like yourself to develop this area of your business.
Yeah, it really does affect reputations. And I know you're in Canada, but in the US, I think it's very similar. Like I think generally like almost all the laws are really similar. The employee contractor regulations are very similar. They've gotten a little stricter down here over the last like 18 months or so. There's a lot more audits and stuff going on in regards to that. But it's definitely like a red flag for employees and great candidates and talent now to join a company where there isn't an HR representative or there isn't an HR process or a resource, because they know that they need to be supported. And most employees, especially the really good talent out there that's looking to work for small businesses, will pass up on bringing this like high level, like super amazing talent to a business because they don't think they'll feel supported because the business hasn't prioritized the human resource part of things. And HR is kind of funny in that way because everybody hates you and everybody hates us until they don't, right? So it's just like that really fun, like, oh my gosh, like HR sucks, and then all of a sudden you're like knocking on the door and we're the ones that can solve your problem. So it's kind of interesting because your employees will, like, we do exit interviews. So we actually hear it from the horse's mouth, like the mistakes that are made by our clients, we'll often pass along that information and stuff too. But it's really meant to, like, it's just been really interesting to like collect all of this data about what people say, and then to also go to these like high level candidates that work for these like very well known tech companies that are thinking about transitioning to working for these awesome online businesses with teams of 5 or 6 that are raking in like multiple 7 figures through their creative marketing and their platform engagement and community building. And the reason that they don't is because they don't think that they will have an outlet if something is to happen. And that's not saying like that somebody abuses them, or even if a client mistreats them or something happens in their personal life, or, whatever the case may be. And they're like, it's going to come to the point where I'm having this massive tragedy in my life and I'm not going to actually have a resource to go to help me solve it in order to also keep my job. So I'm going to go with the safer option, work for a bigger company where I know I'm going to have like resource groups or extra care and attention. And so we just want to make sure that small businesses don't need an HR person on their team, but they do need to show their teams that they take HR seriously, because that means it's taking their employees' experience seriously. And it doesn't have to be something you're doing every single day, but it should be something that you're providing to them. And that's going to help you get better talent that can exponentially grow your business much faster. So, I mean, there's nothing that is better for a business. Like, people are always like, what's your number one tip? And I'm like, get the best talent you can. Go out on a limb. Like, it's like buying the house in the nicer community, even if it's going to stretch you for a while. Like, you'll catch up to it and it'll be worth it in the end. It's like, get that talent that is going to help you, because one wrong hire, like, that you could have prevented or that you cheaped out on basically, or whatever, can make the difference between massive exponential growth in your business and more stagnancy or really teeny tiny bits of growth.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about culture. So what exactly is culture? A lot of people, again, just go and hire a team and just get them to work. But like, what exactly is your company culture? How do you nurture it?
Yeah, so I think there are people that are very naturally skilled at this. And think about your team as a community that you're curating their experience. And if you think about it that way, then your culture will follow right up behind it. But that means intentional action, intentional details, paying attention to what is required of you as the leader of this culture, what actions you will take on the daily, monthly, weekly, from performance reviews to just one-on-ones to how your team meetings are run. All of those are intentional decisions. Some people don't think about it at all. They're just like, they know how to build a culture, they know how to build a community, they know how to lead a team. So when they start to hire, their culture is built like almost seamlessly. And then we get those clients where they have this like group of 4 or 5 people that are kicking butt, but they can't seem to expand their team. And it's because they haven't been able to articulate what those requirements are of the culture. So that is it's a good example of how you can lean into your natural abilities, but then make sure that you're taking the time to actually voice what they are. And one way to do that is to really hold up a mirror and to talk to somebody like that's an expert, or, a consultant, someone like us, or even a peer, somebody that's a peer, or even just talking to your team or having your team talk to each other, and try to nail down like the key components of what it looks like to be a member of that culture. And I think that we think, especially if you're a natural leader or an entrepreneur, you probably already have a lot of these skills to rally people behind you and to lead them and to get them behind a message and things like that. But if you have that natural ability, it starts to fall apart if you don't take the time to define it. If this isn't a natural ability for you, you're maybe somebody that's on the quieter side, that is a little bit more cerebral, introverted. something like that, I would just recommend taking some time to create an intentional culture that actually goes along with who you are. So don't try to become the boisterous CEO, like lean into who you really are and then figure out what makes you work the best. And then make sure you're pretty loud. And I mean, by loud, I mean, put it in your job post, put it on your, careers page, like stuff like that. Be loud and unapologetic about the people that you're bringing into that culture, because it really is going to get run away from you if you're not sure about how to define what exactly it is. So I think if you're at a place where you're just starting to build a team, or you're just switching over from contractors to full-time or part-time employees, or some mix of both, it's important not only just to lean into the strengths that you already have and to what feels good to you as you're leading the team, but also to take a second, shine a mirror on it and define it, and make sure that you're sharing that with your team along the way. Culture is an ever-evolving organism, and it needs to be audited and changed and adapted, and it'll grow with you, and those and things like that. But I noticed that we have very similar conversations with those that you would think are just the most natural leader that just fell off a bus and was like, I'm the president of America or whatever. Well, probably not, but like, I'm naturally a leader and I'm great and I can rally all these people behind us. But they hit that same roadblock as you might feel if this is your first employee and you're not sure how to build that culture. Those are the same questions that we're asking, regardless if you're well on your way or not. So taking the time to define it, and don't leave yourself behind. Like, the culture will be easier for you to build and for you to cultivate and for you to deepen if it feels really natural to you. And you don't want to ever feel like you're trying to fit into a box of a culture that you created because you thought that's what other people wanted. I saw this thing once, and I think this might be a good example. This is a half-formed thought, so it might be weird. But I saw this thing once that was like, your job post is like a sales page. Like, you want to get as many people into it as you can. And I was like, what? Like, absolutely not. Like, I want people to look at my job post and be like, oh, hell no. Like, that is not for me. Like, I don't agree with that. I don't like that. But they know exactly what they're walking into. And I think that we have to create, like, we talk a lot about candidate experience and stuff, but this is not a sales process. Like, you show up unapologetically as yourself and you attract people based on leaning into that, and your culture will start to build, little by little along the way. Just make sure that you're redirecting if something feels weird. Like, if your customer service starts to slip and you don't like that, make sure you're redirecting your person, get them back on track. Like, think of it in that way. But please, for God's sake, like, don't call your job post a sales page. Like, we're not trying to sell people into your company. We're trying to explain to them exactly who you are and what it's like to work for you. And once you have that explained, people have that in the back of their head, and they bring to your culture more of it. They show up in the way that you want them to, and just continuing to define it. I don't know how long I've been talking about this, but I could probably talk about it for 6 months, but continuing to define it along the way, and don't be afraid to change it. Like, if something feels great now, but then it doesn't feel great in a year, good, you grew. Like, your culture will grow with you. That's a great way to be. Congrats, actually. I'd like to meet you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God, the sales page. Like, I personally, because I've done hiring for people as well, and I've been in ops and stuff like that in corporate, but like, there's no way in hell that I want to interview a whole slew of people that are not the right fit because I didn't give enough information as to what they were stepping into and what they could expect working at this organization. Like, that is such a waste of my time. And I'm sorry, but my time is more valuable than that. Like, I know immediately within the first 5 minutes if you're a good fit or not, just by the way that you're showing up, the way that you're talking, the way that you're communicating, like the way that you hold yourself, like just everything. And it's the most painful thing in the world to continue going through an interview that you know right off the bat it's just not a fit.
I know. I'm really bad at it too. Like, over the years, I've been hiring for like 12 years now or something. Paradigm doesn't actually do recruiting by choice. Like, my team is like, let's do it. Oh, Dixie's back there. But my team is like, we should recruit, because we basically help people build out their processes, and we help them post their ad. We watch their interviews, but I will not be your recruiter. And part of that is because I don't know if I can't hide it anymore. Like, the face is just like, Yeah, like and I don't want people to feel that way. It's not like there's anything wrong with them. I can just see like this isn't going to work for this client or this person in this business or whatever. But I mean, I could do a whole like 3-hour podcast on some of the weird stuff people have said to me in interviews.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Build your job posting in the way that's going to narrow down the ideal clients or candidates to the ones that you actually want to work with you.
Yeah. And I think like they talk about it, I brought this up before and people are like, well, no, sales pages are supposed to repel people as well. And I'm like, yeah, but they also take you on a journey of like pain points and, you know, like agitating your problem and, stuff like I don't want that. Like I want the person to I want the first thing out the gate of the job post to be something polarizing. And then I want them to read through it and make sure they're qualified. And then I want them to be polarized again. So yeah, of course, there are some amazing companies out there where we get 300-400 applicants when we post for a part-time position. And that's always really fun to see because those, our companies feel really proud about what they're building and things like that. But you only need one. So like going through all of those applications, like that's really fun, but it's also not always in the best interest of the company, to your point. And also like it doesn't really mean anything. Like one company can post one job and then post another job and you can have very similar messaging, but not as many people are applying for a senior accountant as they are an account manager or, an admin assistant or something. So the number of applicants really doesn't matter. We tell people if you have 20 people that are generally qualified, you have more than enough to find your candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's dive into building out a team. So somebody is ready to take that big plunge. They're ready to expand their team in order to continue building their business. How do you go about that step? Like what exactly is the process that you take clients through?
Yeah. So if our signature service is called the Paradigm Solution. So we've adapted it for a whole bunch of different industries and stuff like that. And I think that's the easiest way to explain it is that our goal with the Paradigm Solution is to create a foundation for your business so that you don't have to hire an HR person internally for like 25 employees. So it's going to set up your compliance. So you're not going to know anything about that. You're going to fill out a questionnaire. We're going to help you figure out your policies and then we're going to do it for you. We're going to put together your handbook and your documents and your templates and your offer letters and all of that stuff that you're going to need along the way. And we know what you need because I've been doing this for, a decade and a half. And I have team members that have been with me for over 2 years that are working on these projects with us. And we're also going to spend a lot of time getting to know you. So your stuff, your HR document suite is going to look really different than the next person's. And that's the fun part. That's where we start to see where your culture starts to seep in to even the way that you have people request time off or the time off that you provide or the holidays that you provide, or if you provide a floating holiday, or if you give everybody their birthdays off, like those are all really great benefits and they sound really fun and nice, but they don't always work for every business. And that's fine. Some of our companies are like a full week off for Thanksgiving. Other of our businesses, like our e-commerce brands are like, and I know you guys don't have Thanksgiving. Well, that one we do anyway, a different one, I think. But if you're an e-commerce brand and you're giving people a week off at Black Friday, like you're going out of business, dude. Like, and so there's nothing like better or worse than if you're giving people like extraneous time off or if you're giving them unlimited time off or, whatever the case may be. It's just about what kind of culture you want to build. So through our onboarding, we build out your compliance to be a real reflection of your culture. And then we talk about your labor margins and your profit margins. So we talk about what you can actually afford. And this is something that's skipped over quite a bit. And oftentimes during this process, we kind of take a bunch of information from you and then we spit it back out in a really informed strategy for growth. And almost all of our clients end up raising their prices because once you start to see about how you're going to have to pay other people and the service that you're going to provide is going to be so exceptional and it's going to be worth more money, the clients end up raising their prices not only to accommodate the fact that they're going to have a team member and to make sure that their margins are good, but also because the level of service that they're providing goes up immediately from that first hire. So we want to make sure that no matter what kind of business it is, whether it's e-commerce or service-based or professional professional service or an in-person brick and mortar, that you know what those margins are, because that's where you remove some of the fear of hiring in the first place. You know what your potential is, your capacity potential, and what to expect. And you also know the risk, because we're not going to just have it be out there and be like, I'm really scared to hire. That's so expensive. And it's like, yeah, it is. But I don't want you hiring somebody because you think you need a director of operations, and then you also think they're going to be $110,000 a year, when you probably, after we shake it all out, you actually need somebody to help you with fulfillment. And that's going to be an hourly person that's part-time, working 20 hours a week, and cost you less than $2,000 a month. And so it prevents those like icky feelings of resentment and overwork, and it prevents you from getting burned out because you're just working to pay your team. And so it's really important to make sure that those margins are good. And then on the third thing that we kind of hit on that topic is just a really defined company culture and a defined growth path. If your company is one that is experiencing rapid growth and you don't even need to market right now, that process, that part of the paradigm solution is going to look a lot different than someone who is bringing somebody on to help them keep up with their work so that they can market again soon. So it's very customizable, and then it really just stands the test of time as you move forward. So it's really, I mean, if you're working with anybody in regards to HR, they should be cool with talking to your lawyer. They should be cool with talking to your accountant. They should be cool with answering any questions that come up for payroll. They should be cool with talking to your ops manager or your OBM if you already have somebody external that's helping you with that. Because it's a collaborative effort to make sure that during this change, your business keeps running, but it's going to go through a big transition and change, and it can be really scary. And there are moments where it's one of our first messages we send to our clients is like, this can be icky at times. You'll maybe get pushback from team members about their metrics and KPIs that we're giving you, or you might get pushback about pay or title changes. Sometimes we really piss off an OBM here and there, stuff like that. So I think it's really fun to work through these things and to start dreaming with the business, but it's also, this is setting you up for a long game. So our 90-day package is setting you up, but this is going to be something you're going to work towards for the duration of your business. So it's kind of like, here's your roadmap, and here's everything you need, and we're compliant, and we have some maintenance packages and stuff. But on the flip side of it, it's informed by who you are, what you want your culture to be. It leaves space for growth. It leaves space for creativity. And there's plenty of room for collaboration with the people that you already trust too. If HR knows how to do anything, it's talk to people. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the hiring and onboarding process. A lot of people just throw people in. They have like one interview, and then they make a decision, and then that's pretty much it. And then they just expect that employee to jump into their business and know what to do. I know my own process of helping clients have something structured in place in order to support them. Things like having a test project during the interview process to really see firsthand the skill set or anything like that pertaining to whatever the project is based off of. And then the onboarding is like making sure you have like a checklist and things like that, or maybe an onboarding list that's shared internally, and then one that's also external shared with that individual so that they can see what's going on. And what is your process, and how important is this aspect to hiring and building out a team?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, and I struggle with this because we use all these words so interchangeably, and I do too. And I'm trying to get better at like really defining what the hell I'm talking about, because I think people will take it and run with it. Like I might be talking about onboarding, but you might hear me say onboarding and think we're talking about interviewing or the hiring process. Or you might hear me talk about the hiring process, or you might be talking to, maybe one of your clients is asking you about the hiring process, and you're thinking like, oh yeah, interviews, rubrics, paid test project, which is chef's kiss, love it. All of those types of things. And you might go off on this whole tangent, and they're like, no, I just meant like, what role should I hire? And it's like, oh, well, now we got to go back because we got to talk about your operations. Like, it's like these weird little misnomers that you can tell are being misused in a lot of different areas. So when it comes to an onboarding process, I don't want to be confusing. So that's why I wanted to like do this quick disclaimer, but I'm trying to figure out how to like talk about this in a way that doesn't make anyone feel confused. So I like to like kind of define the actual pieces, the actual steps. So I think that in the beginning, when we think of hiring, we think of interviewing. So when I talk about hiring, it's about the pre-signing off on the offer letter. So we're in the hiring process. That means that we don't have anyone on our team yet. We are defining the role. We're creating the metrics that they're going to be measured by. We are creating a system which we can bring them in. We're creating their task lists, stuff like that. That process is going to be reflective of an interview process, which we are going to plug all of these things together and let that drive our process of bringing in candidates that then go through the hiring process. At a certain point, the hiring process stops and the onboarding process begins. And I think this is what, to your point, what you were saying, like you kind of just throw people in and expect them to know what they're doing. So what we like to do is create a bridge between the hiring process and what we're calling the onboarding process. And we do that through the job description. So the job description generally is going to have 3 key components that they're responsible for. Those 3 key components are going to be broken down into tasks and, generalities and stuff. But then there should be one measurable, this is going to sound repetitive, metric for each of those parts of their job. So all of those metrics should be the things that are going to get you an ROI. So in the hiring process, we're finding somebody that can check all of those things off the list so that when you bring them on your team, we're basically just using that job description to drive their training, to drive their metrics that we're measuring, to drive essentially their task lists, to drive their ClickUp, access, to drive every single thing that they're doing. So if you're in a place where you're starting to hire, take the extra time to make that job description kind of the root of anything that person is going to do for your business. Because then through the onboarding process, you can let that thing guide you right through. So even if you don't have something clear like a handbook or an orientation or a culture guide or any of that stuff yet, which is totally fine. Oftentimes we need help so that we can get to that point where we can build that stuff out. Just make sure that you have that list and you're making sure that every single day they're doing something that is going to create some type of return on the investment that you're making with them in your business. And it doesn't have to be pretty and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be action-taking materials that you are present for. So in that process, we might send people their payroll stuff and, in a perfect situation, we're sending them their payroll stuff, scheduling an orientation. They meet with team members. They come to the meeting, like their first team meeting. We do some icebreakers. Maybe they get some swag in the mail. They get access to their company's intranet where all their rights and their labor law posters and everything are housed. They know how to get access to HR. They know how to ask for help. They know how to schedule an appointment with you. All of that stuff is handled within the first few days. But what ends up happening usually, and this is not something to be ashamed of, is they get their list of tasks and then the CEO is so busy already that they're trying to figure out the payroll and they're trying to figure out the state registration or province. I don't know. I'm like Canada. Different registrations, and they're bringing on their person, and now they're stressed and they have all these clients, and the reason they hired in the first place is that they're busy. So the biggest thing that I would do is just as a CEO, block off 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day if you can to just spend time with this person and walk through each of those tasks. Show them why you built things the way that you did. Show them the mess in your project management system. Vulnerability is totally fine. Show them your Google Drive, show them what your vision is, show them what your goal is. Like, just talk to them, get to know them, like fellowship with them, build relationships with them, allow them opportunities for other people that are experts in their parts of the work to sit with them as well. Spend that extra time and investment just kind of like effing around, basically. Just like really, because you're going to think it's not going to have a purpose, but they're pulling so many cultural indicators out of that. And they're going to start to see the why behind the what without you having to sit down and explain it to them. They're going to start to like really build a relationship and trust with you. And then, at the end of the day, we're all about people getting support first and foremost. Do we want them to do it right and through the compliant way? Absolutely. That's why I have a business. But if you need help more than you have time to sit down and make everything perfect, get the help and then just carve out the time to spend with that person. Even if it means a couple of extra long work days for you to make sure that you're building that relationship with them. It will pay off so quickly. If you did a great hire, then they will become you. Essentially, they will become, or they will embody parts of you that really reflects in them. They will add to that culture. If it's not a good fit, you're going to know real fast. So you're going to spend a lot less time and money, and you're going to spend a lot less. You're going to be able to reach out to other candidates that maybe have been a better fit really, really, really quickly. And don't be afraid to lean into your intuition. If it doesn't feel good that first day, your employee probably doesn't feel great about it either. So don't be afraid to have hard conversations right from the jump. Worry about the pretty stuff later. I would say if you've hired one employee, get in touch with us. We'll do the pretty stuff for you. That's why it's done for you service. We're not trying to have you learn all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I just don't want anyone to hesitate getting support when they need it just because they feel like it has to be perfect because they've seen all the pretty things that other people are posting or whatever the case may be. The postal annex guy up the street can hire an employee. You can hire one too. You know?
Absolutely. Oh my God, yes. Okay, one more question before we dive into how you can support your community. So how do you see the role of ethics in running a business? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs to stay on the up and up in this area of their business, especially when they're faced with challenging situations and decisions?
I think for me, one of our core values is integrity. So internally, externally, wherever it stands, part of that is a reaction to my own experiences and not always having the most integritous of experiences in other places. So I'm pretty strict on this. My culture knows, like my team knows, like if it's even like bordering on a little bit of clickbaity or not in service to our community or, you know, a money grab or something like that, like we're not doing it. And I say that from a place of like, look how great I am or whatever, but also like, it's not always the best thing. Like, it's not always the best thing to be so rigid in the way that you think about stuff. So when it comes to ethics, I think that as long as you are clear and straightforward about what is truly genuinely important to you and you're considering the experience of other people that are brought into that, then you'll be good. Because if I walked into a situation that maybe didn't have that same feeling as I did about ethics or integrity or, you know, blunt honesty or whatever you want to call it, that is not always the best thing. If I at least knew that my employer didn't feel that way, or I knew exactly what to expect from them, then I would feel comfortable to still be myself and I would know what was expected and I wouldn't be in a harmful situation because I would have been told, here's what your expectations are and here's what you can expect from us. So when it comes to ethics, I think just leaning into what you find the most natural and realize that when you're bringing people into your team, they are human people. So we often hear business coaches or business leaders. I actually heard Gary Vee, who I actually think is really cool, say something weird lately, like, no one is good at hiring. And I was like, well, that's not really, I mean, we can't control every situation that a person does, but like hiring isn't necessarily like a game of feelings. Like, you know, it's like pretty strategic anyway. But I was like, okay, Gary. But regardless, I think that it's just really important to like make sure that you're really clear about what those ethics are and that they don't always have to be the same for everybody else. And for us, it's really important that we support marginalized communities, especially women and women of color and women from LGBT community and just anything that can uplift or give people a little bit of a better chance. By acknowledging our own privilege and basically creating space for people from other backgrounds and cultures to come in. I think that it's our responsibility, at least I believe, as white women, to create that space for women of color. And I don't know, I think it's like, I hate to be like a big stubborn like jackass or whatever, but like, you have to, like, I don't care, you know, like, I think you just, if you want to be a good business owner that's going to be profitable, like, you have to create that space. Like, you have to use your privilege for good. And you have to speak out for people that can't always speak out for themselves. And I don't necessarily think that it's our role as business owners to decide what's right and wrong everywhere. But I do think it's our responsibility to use our privilege and our platform to stand up for people that may not have the best chance or may not have the privileges that we have. Ethics on top of that, I think, come naturally, you know, based on what you want your culture to look like and how you serve your community and how you show up for your people and how you show up for your clients and all of that good stuff. But I think that there are a couple things that are kind of, they should just be a requirement. Like, no one should have to wonder if they're a woman of color working for your company, if they're in a safe place to talk about instances of racism with a client or instances of any type of abuse or any type of condescension or the feelings that they're having within their own experience. I'm not a person of color and I don't come from a marginalized community. I'm a cis white woman. And I don't think it's my place to speak on behalf of the experiences of other people, but I do think it's my entire job as a business owner to create space for people to feel safe to speak about those things, whether I agree with them or not. And so I don't know. I think that in your business, you might have other ethics that you just will not compromise on. And I think it's really great to see businesses sticking up and standing out for some of those things. And diversity is proven to make us money. So there's really no downside. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now let's talk about your services. We've gotten a glimpse as to how you support clients, but what are the containers, the service levels that you offer?
Yeah, so we pretty much have two main things. So we have the paradigm solution, which we kind of talked through all the way earlier. I'm going to be like snagging this podcast and learning from myself because I feel like I did a good job of explaining it for once in my life. So the paradigm solution, it's our signature service. You can find like our main outline of the service on our website, but we have so many different offshoots of it for different industries and things like that we've been able to customize over the years. And then our other thing we do is our membership. So it's called Set to Scale, and it's really just kind of an HR retainer, or it's a place for you to have HR that knows you, that knows about your business, that knows what you are all about, that knows what your team's doing, to either maintain or to DIY. So it's a monthly membership option. Your team doesn't have access to us, but they'll know that you have access to HR. And it's really open to anyone. So we primarily work with US businesses for the paradigm solution, but Set to Scale, our membership, is really open for anyone. A lot of the questions that come up in there don't have much to do with compliance. It's all about, I need to have this tough conversation with this employee, or I'm not sure if I can afford to hire this employee. I'm going to use the profit margin template to figure it out. We have weekly calls, so you can pop in every week for Q&A if you want to. And it's just a really great supportive community of other women leaders that are leading big teams. These women leaders are people that I really look up to in business. And the fact that we can serve them and create community around it has been so rewarding to see everyone learn from each other. And HR is the great equalizer, man. People will put everyone in the same room and we will all relate to each other regardless of what we've built so far in entrepreneurship. So that's really what Set to Scale is and what we do.
Amazing. Okay, so for those that need to look you up because they don't currently have that HR support, where do you hang out the most online?
I mean, I'm trying to say that I'm on LinkedIn, but I mean, realistically, I'm on Instagram. And so follow me on Instagram, shoot me a DM. I'm in all of them. We have new resources come out all the time, trying to make it a little bit more accessible for you to have true HR people operations support within your business, even on a small budget. And I'm sure the show notes will list out a few different things there. But the company's called Paradigm. So on Instagram, it's the Paradigm with 2 M's. And then on LinkedIn, you can just look me up by my name and let me know you listen to the podcast, because I love to continue these conversations. And if you still like me after all those hot takes, then great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kira, for taking the time, but for also sharing so much information that is so important when we're building our teams and our businesses. I know that people are taking notes left, right, and center during this episode. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. This was so great. I'm so appreciative for you having me here. And also, I mean, we really just spanned the gamut of we started with trauma and we ended with paradigm. So here we are.
Here we are. Thank you for joining us today. Your presence truly elevates Love Unplugged into a home for freedom-driven women who aspire to be visionary CEOs. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd be honored if you take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us bring more impactful conversations to our community. Let's continue to grow this empowering community together. Until next time.